Welcome everyone to North Ogden City Council. Meeting now will come to order. We'll begin our meeting this evening with the invocation by Council Member Swanson, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be given by Corbin Farrell from Troop 412, of which we welcome that troop with us this evening.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for the opportunity to be here together. We're thankful for the government that we have, the forum that allows us all to participate. We're grateful for those who choose to participate. We are grateful for those who make sacrifices on behalf of our community and of our nation, and we recognize those who have recently given their lives and those who are on the battlefields throughout the world. We pray for their safety. We pray for their families that have been left behind. We pray for all those that know and love them. We're grateful for thy guiding hand in so many things and pray for a spirit of community and a civility to be with us tonight. And this we do in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Will the audience please stand to repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To the audience, may be seated.
Thank you, Corbin. First item on our agenda is discussion or action to consider November 13th council meeting minutes.
Mayor, I move that we approve the meeting minutes of November 13th.
It's been moved by Councilman Turner to approve the minutes of November 13th.
I second that.
A second by Councilman Severing. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The meeting is now open for public comments.
Good evening, Susanna Burt, 1722 North, 150 East. I am, again, unable to stay through your whole meeting, and I hope you get out early. But in regards to points, agenda items 8, 9, and 10, I do trust that you all will consider that the Village at Prominence Point has made a number of changes to their original submission to the master plan community. There are things that I am concerned about as far as reducing the setback from 20 feet to 10 feet for the older adult phase. And I think that there are some really good things to that, but there's also negatives to it. And I really wish I could stay, but I wanted to voice my opinion that I do have concerns that they have been changing it quite a bit, it seems, in the last little while, with repeated amendments to the master plan community that was submitted a number of years ago. And I will be very transparent. I am a backyard neighbor, I have pictures of it on my property. And there are some concerns that I have, so thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Welcome, Representative Anderson.
Thank you. Is this the point where you wanted me to talk?
Either that or want me to come up on the agenda.
Oh, I didn't see the. Okay, well, I'll do it now, if that's okay. Okay, it's Kyle Anderson, 1257 East, 2250 North in North Ogden. I just wanted to let you know that I received a phone call after the accident on 1700 North where the two little children were killed, and then several subsequent accidents. I got phone calls from constituents worried about the speed limit on North Washington Boulevard. So I did some homework and got some traffic counts for 2700 west of Highway 89 where the speed limit is 45. And compared that to our traffic counts here, and also Perry, as well as the east portion of 2600, east of 89, where the speed limit is higher. And I shared that with you, Dot. Our traffic is 26,000 cars daily on North Washington Boulevard. The traffic counts west of 89 are similar. From Rule and White Boulevard and east is 26,000 cars a day. West is 23,000 cars a day. Looking at the road, we have equivalent numbers of businesses. We have much more residential traffic. And also talking to the Weber County School District, right now they use Washington Boulevard as kind of their border for the elementary school, and nothing west of the elementary school goes to Green Acres. In the coming year, that will change, and they will have to take some of the students from west of Washington Boulevard to go to Green Acres, which will be then some children who will have to cross that busy street. So when I shared all of that with UDOT, and I talked to Councilwoman Stoker, sorry, and just to see how the council felt, and she said that they supported this. I went forward to UDOT and talked to them. I received this from UDOT, who said, I've directed our traffic and safety staff to conduct a speed study as soon as possible in preparation of making changes to the existing speed limit. Once that is completed, we will issue a temporary traffic engineering order, which is allowed by UDOT policy, to lower the speed limit on the northern section of Washington Boulevard to the desired speed limit of 45 miles per hour. We will then monitor the speed limit and the driver's compliance with the posted speed over the course of 1 year to determine if driver's compliance warrants a permanent change. If at that time the 85th percentile speed remains over 50 miles per hour, we will change the speed limit back to 50 miles per hour as required by law. So they have agreed to study it, and if we comply with the lower speed, then they will leave it at that. Any questions that I can answer?
Sounds like a good approach.
Okay, and do I have the council's support to move forward with UDOT?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your attendance.
Mr. Anderson? Yes. I need a copy of that.
You can just have this one.
Hi, Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Brent Call, 835 East, 2100 North. Mayor and Council, I sent all of you a letter on Saturday asking for your consideration to review the current zoning ordinance on Code 11-7A- put my glasses on -4. Anyway, I know I only had 5 minutes at this point, so I don't want to take a lot of your time. There's a lot of background in that letter that I sent you. But I think the current ordinance that was adopted back in June presents a arbitrary definition of what a large accessory building means. And having done a little bit of research on some of the other neighboring cities, I tried to pick some cities that had either similar or larger size than North Ogden, and found that North Ogden's current adopted zoning requirements are much more restrictive than any of our neighboring cities. I particularly liked the approach that Layton took to it, where the setback of an accessory building was based on the height of the building, not the size of the building, and was adjusted by 3-foot increments based on every height increase of building size. Anyway, I could take the whole evening if we wanted to talk about it, but I would just ask the council's consideration in reviewing that and asking the Planning Commission and the zoning to review that, hopefully to make a change to that in the future. I'm not sure what the approach is from this point on. I've presented that and asked for your consideration. So maybe you can tell me what the next step would be.
Would that be to the Planning Commission?
So, Council, that would be to if you wanted to recommend the Planning Commission look at that again. I'd be fine with that.
Yep.
Yes.
Agreed.
I read the letter. I thought it was very well written, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Michelle must have written it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate that.
Aaron Christensen, 2428 Barker Parkway. Mayor and Council, I wish you a Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a good one with your families. I wanted to speak commenting on agenda item number 13 concerning a resolution to deal with committees here in the city. First, just as a friendly note on section 1 of the resolution, it lists committees that are to be decommissioned. It lists a number of specific committees and then ends with the catch-all phrase of any other committee, essentially eliminating all committees in the city. Section 2 follows, listing 3 committees the city intends to continue with. And I would suggest you consider amending section 1, that last sentence, to read any other committee not specified in section 2. Otherwise, we are eliminating everything and then saying, but we're not eliminating. So just a friendly note for you. Second, according to Resolution 8/2018, the amended City Council Rules of Procedure adopted by this council in September this year, when a committee is formed, its purpose and relevant time frame will be established. It has also been the practice of the council to publicly appoint members of these committees so citizens can know who is on a committee. Once a committee is given its final report, the committee is to be dissolved according to those rules. Today's resolution calls for continuation of 3 committees. One of those committees is the Barker Park Committee. The problem with that is in January 2016, the minutes of the Barker Park Committee record the mayor's request for a final meeting to be held, followed by a report to the City Council. A final meeting was held on May 25th, 2016. And the minutes from that meeting report that they were not adopted because it was the final meeting of the committee, and known members of that committee acknowledged they never met again. A final report was given to the council June 14th, 2016. The city's website states the Barker Park Committee is not an active committee. If the city plans to have a Barker Park Committee, which there's obvious need for it, it appears that the committee needs to be reestablished by the council, stating its purpose and relevant working time frame and appointing community members to the committee. Finally, the minutes from March 14th, 2017 council meeting state that the Barker Park Committee has been working on plans for the park, and an informal amphitheater committee was formed. Nowhere can I find in city code that we're allowed to have informal committees. Before the council votes to disband the majority of the established committees, it appears there was an active committee working on the development of the larger amphitheater we now have. They met between June 2016 and March 2017, but the city has not properly notified the public of these meetings or properly recorded the minutes of those meetings. So before we vote to disband or decommission these meetings and put the minutes into archives as the resolution states, we'd ask that those minutes be made public. My intent in asking for these things is we have rules as a city for a reason, and it seems we have gotten into a habit of picking and choosing how to follow the rules. And as hard as that, I don't mean that as an attack. I mean that in goodwill, that we've found that you will not always be on council for how many years you serve. There will be a new council. If we don't follow the rules now, we can't expect the next council to follow the rules. Something as simple as when I tried to find this new resolution 8/2018, I had difficulty finding it because if you find the signature on that resolution, it says that it is dated September 8th, 2018. September 8th, 2018 is a Saturday. And I believe that September 18th is what was meant with that. It's something simple, but it did make it harder for me to find it. And so if we want to be clear and open, if we want to be transparent, and we want to expect our citizens to follow the rules, we'd ask you as a council to pay attention to the details. And we're happy to help with that. We appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Chris Heiner, 972 East, 2650 North. I would like to discuss agenda item number 6, even though it appears that that decision has already been made. I am just amazed at the council's lack of due diligence when it comes to road projects and to determining how roads should be handled, speed limits, widths of road, which roads should be expanded, which roads should be completed, and which ones should not. If you want to take a look at how speed affects accidents, I think you need to look no further than the end of 2700, where it meets I-15. For many years, it was felt that the speed limit should be kept at 65 miles an hour because that was safe. Then it was felt that it should be kept at 70 miles an hour because that was safe. Now it's 75, and in most sections outside of the Wasatch Front, it's 80 miles an hour on I-15. Yet we're saying that we want to keep Washington Boulevard to a lower speed limit because that will be safer. What that will cause is more congestion, which means more traffic backed up on the only road that goes north and south the full length of the city. We do not have another option. Downtown Ogden does. And for that, they can have lower speed limits. Washington Boulevard, Monroe Boulevard both reflect a 35 mile an hour speed zone through the most congested part of town. And as you expand outward, the speed limit gets higher at 240 and then 50 miles an hour. And 55 if you go south through South Ogden and continue on to Highway 89. We don't have that luxury. We don't have Wall Avenue that can carry traffic, or 4 lanes of traffic at 40 miles an hour. We don't have Harrison Boulevard that can carry 4 lanes of traffic at 40 miles an hour. We don't have Monroe Boulevard that can carry traffic at 35 miles an hour, in addition to Washington, which in downtown Ogden has 6 lanes of traffic. We don't have businesses that are wall to wall. Our businesses are more spread out. Now, we do have concerns with traffic, especially in the intersection by IHC. And I do believe that a traffic signal should be installed there. I very strongly believe that that should be the case, considering that you have more and more businesses going into that complex across the street, as they should be. You also have more and more traffic going to the IHC, as well as businesses going in near the Zions Bank. That's only going to increase. And yet we continue to ignore that fact. And, we've already had 3 deaths in that intersection in the last number of years. Lowering the speed limit is not going to reduce that. Putting in a traffic signal will. Putting in Monroe Boulevard so that there's another option to go north and south and alleviate traffic on Washington Boulevard will do that. But lowering the speed limit without having another alternative route is only going to cause road rage. It's going to cause frustration. It's going to cause more and more traffic jams. Yes, there is 2 hours every day where traffic naturally slows to 40 miles an hour due to the number of cars on the road. Outside of those 2 hours, you still have 22 hours where the posted speed limit of 50 miles an hour is not an issue. And yet, the council seems to have already made their decision without ever really looking or studying the intersection or talking to people and getting their opinions on the road. I feel like my comments are very similar to giving a dead man an enema. May not do any good, but it certainly won't hurt.
Mayor, you're done.
You are done. 5 minutes are up.
That's ridiculous.
Good evening. I too wish you a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
For the broad citizens of our, oh, thank you, Randall Wynn, 2412 Barker Parkway. For the broad amount of citizens in our community, I think the most important item on the agenda today, granted that I could be disagreed with, but is item 11 concerning the form-based code, because it'll have the most effect on our community and on the citizens therein. And so I would like to speak to that tonight. As I expressed a couple of weeks ago in this council, I have grave concerns concerning the form-based code that is being proposed for the business section of our city. Here are some of my concerns and also my encouragements on it. The concerns I have down to 4 here. The first concern is I think we're going too fast, too much hurry. I believe this is being rushed through without adequate research and with too little discussion by the City Council and our residents. As you know, we have had some trouble in the past with hurrying projects and policies through too quickly and too quietly. Number 2, it's too restrictive on businesses. What North Ogden needs, I think, are businesses that will serve our citizens and keep us from needing to drive to Riverdale. The building designs and restrictions outlined in the form-based code will discourage many of those businesses from setting up shop in North Ogden. They will instead, most likely, many of those businesses will find sites outside of our town in neighboring cities, which will hurt our business section. The third is like unto it, it will be too difficult to find occupants. By restricting the type of buildings and design that we will accept into our town, we will have trouble finding businesses to build or occupy those buildings. Again, businesses will go elsewhere where cutesy buildings are not required. You know, after attending the meeting two weeks ago, I attended the Wednesday meeting of the Planning Commission where this subject was discussed as well. There was the builder of the new proposed auto parts thing building, and he expressed, as we got talking about this a little bit, he expressed an anecdote concerning Park City. He said, we would love to build an auto parts store in Park City, but Park City won't let us because they have these same kind of restrictions. And so we can't go into that city. And I just imagine the same thing being forced upon us here. In other words, if we agree to this, I think we will find ourselves in a box that we wish we were out of at some point. The last point I have is too much traffic restriction, and I think the testimony we've had concerning 26,000 per day, I think that was probably the better point than I was going to make. Washington Boulevard is one of our 2 main thoroughfares coming from and going to work. Concentrating our businesses up to the front sidewalks and restricting parking access to behind the buildings will cause traffic problems and unnecessarily slow the flow. I talked to my brother today. He lives down in Arizona. He said Gilbert is an example of form-based codes, and it's worked quite well there. But he said he lives in Mesa actually, and he said that Mesa is trying this and with much difficulty. They can't find businesses to come in because of the restrictive code. So anyway, those are the cautions I would talk to us about. Encouragements, and looking at the plans, I didn't look at all 143 pages or whatever it was, but I looked at the diagrams and read many of them. I highly support the downtown market area part of the plan. It will create the kind of quaint village you are looking for without committing our whole downtown to it. That size allocation is appropriate. And secondly, having looked at the Washington Boulevard lane layout that is proposed with its trees on the sides and in the center, I think it's wonderful. It will make our town very classy and distinct from the rest of the boulevard south of North Ogden. To sum it up, I would suggest that we hold off adopting this tonight and do some detailed homework and getting civic input before proceeding. There are many towns that have tried this and a few have succeeded. A lot more have trouble keeping their buildings occupied. The ones who succeed usually have an historic connection and depend on tourists to make it work. This would not rebuild an old town. We don't have an old town, but try to create something that was never there. Please consider the practical aspects of this proposal to potential businesses and to our citizens' needs. And if it would be all right, could I submit a copy of this?
Give Tanette.
Pass one down. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
I've had to do so much writing if I'd known you had a cheat sheet for us.
If there are no other comments, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. We have a presentation by Kirk Larson. Welcome.
Can I have you come down? Kurt, good to see you tonight. So I'm Kirk Larson. I'm a local artist. And I painted this in honor of Mayor Brent Taylor. And I want to donate this painting to the city, if you will have it.
Thank you. It's an honor to receive that. Thank you so much.
And Jim,
Great talent there.
thank you.
Alex.
I want to donate this signed #1 print to Jenny and her family. They will frame. Remember?
We're going to have to do an addition to the house for the Brent Taylor Memorial.
Thank you.
Have him show it to the council. We can't see him. We can see him.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
That's pretty cool.
Next item on the agenda, we welcome Jenny Taylor with us this evening. It's always an honor and a privilege to have you here, along with your sister and Brent's mother. And we have a presentation of the American Spirit Award given by John Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity. I'm not bearing Christmas gifts for the council, but I do have some surprises in here, and I want to share those with you at this time. This award is for the American Spirit Project. The goal of the American Spirit Project is to encourage greater understanding and appreciation of our nation's form of government. And certainly, Major Brent Taylor epitomized those qualities of serving our nation, our community. So we want to honor that tonight. And I'd like to present to Jenny a plaque. This says American Spirit Award, Brent Taylor. And there's a little envelope with a check inside that I'm sure at Christmas time you'll find use for that.
I'm sure the kids will love that. Okay.
And the plaque also comes with its own little stand. You can put it there on the stand. And
Okay, good.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. Thank you very much. Did you want to say something?
I do. That's all right. Mayor Chug, council members, I'd Thank you for this, John. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you to the city of North Ogden. As we speak of the American spirit in the form of America's government, I would be remiss if I did not thank each one of you for being willing to run for and hold public office. The first few minutes of this meeting have proven that is not an easy task. I know that despite what many lay citizens might think, you put in countless hours, immeasurable energy, and true consideration to each decision you make. I've said it before when speaking of Brent, no decision has ever been made by flipping a coin. It is an honor to receive both that painting and this award in Brent's memory, and especially in the legacy of this great country. I've spoken much with my children over the past several weeks, as we've spoken with media, celebrities, political officials, representatives of higher government, and other people that our paths might not ever have crossed had we not lost Brent on November 3rd. It's come to the point where most of my children want nothing to do with any of the public discussion because it is just a reminder of what we have lost. So yesterday I took time as a mother and in the spirit of their father to let them know why it is that I choose to be so public with what we have experienced, and why I am so confident that Brent would want this to be shared not only with the residents of North Ogden, but with the citizens of the United States of America. The price of freedom is immeasurably high, and it has not yet been paid in full. There are thousands before and more to come who will lay down their lives for our country. It is a sacred, holy honor for our family to now stand among those ranks. And though we did not ask for this, and I can tell you nothing has shocked us more, I have committed to myself, to this city, to my family, to our country, and to my God above all, that none of the charity and generosity that has been shown to our family will be given in vain. In the 6 or 7 decades that might stand between me and seeing Brent again, we as a family will raise our voice high in the spirit of America. It is not the spirit of Brent Taylor. It is not the spirit of North Ogden City. It is the spirit of America. And when that flag hangs in that canyon, or half-mast on a pole, or in a classroom of elementary school children as they pledge allegiance, I know, I hope you know, and I have committed to make sure my children know that this is a blessed land. Freedoms are not America's possession. They come straight from God, and we have been blessed to have them, and with those blessings come an immeasurable responsibility to share them. Brent did not have to go to Afghanistan to fight for those people to have freedom. He had many freedoms here. He did not have to go back to Afghanistan. He did not have to go to Iraq or stay for a second consecutive tour of duty a dozen years ago. But something within him that also stirs within me has compelled him to that service. And he is not alone in that compulsion. Again, I thank you, City Council members, Mayor Chugg. You carry a heavy weight. To the city staff, you carry an even heavier weight as you continue in your careers much longer than most elected officials. To the residents of our fair city, I would encourage you to get involved in a civil and respectful way. If you're unhappy with the way you think things are being done, let your voice be heard in a civil and respectful way. Do not jump to conclusions or accusations that people are making decisions without thinking and careful consideration. Do not accuse people of doing things in the dark or behind closed doors when you have no idea what you might be talking about. The spirit of America is a spirit of action, a spirit of freedom, and above all, a spirit of responsibility. And it is my call tonight, and will be for the remaining time that I have on this earth, that we all honor not just Major Brent Taylor, but the American flag and the God under whose direction that flag so freely flies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always an honor to have you with us.
Say wow. You know,
Next item on the agenda is discussion or action to consider quarterly financial report. Our presenter will be Evan Nelson, our finance director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's hard to follow Jenny Taylor. We're blessed by Jenny Taylor and her family. So in the packet, we've provided you with a quarterly financial report for the quarter ending September 2018. We've provided some additional information as well. So I'll start with the sales tax report from fiscal year 18. Do you have that document, John? So we wanted to give you the final numbers, sales tax numbers from last fiscal year. They're positive. We had good things happen in the last fiscal year. The city came in $75,000 ahead of our budget and $175,000 ahead of the previous year. So that's an increase of 6.8%. So we saw some strong growth in our sales tax for the fiscal year. In the current fiscal year, we have 3 months reported so far for the sales tax trend, and in those 3 months, we are about $15,000 ahead of our projections, or 2.21%. So the positive trend is continuing, and we feel like our estimates for sales tax revenues are somewhat conservative. Most of the fiscal year still is ahead, so we'll keep watching that. We watch the sales tax revenues a lot closer than we do a lot of the other revenues, because sales tax makes up a large share of our general fund revenues, and it's fairly volatile depending on how the economy is doing. So it's a pretty good indicator to us of how things are and how things are expected to go over the course of the coming months and years. Maybe while we're on sales tax, John, did you get that email with the link? Do you want to pull that up? I just wanted to talk for a minute about the economic forecast. We have a report here from Deloitte. John, if you could just scroll down to there's a line graph down a little bit right there. Yeah, that one. This is a graph showing real GDP in the United States. It goes back to 1995, so it covers quite a range of years, and you can see the Great Recession there that dipped so low. And then the gray shaded area on the right side is where the forecast begins. So, economists don't always agree, but some economists are projecting that we'll begin to see a slowing of the economy, even possibly a recession. Deloitte does this forecast where they kind of do different scenarios. They factor in, possible action by Congress or the president, and try to estimate how things might look with a variety of variables. So, the gloomiest picture that they're projecting is the one that dips down the lowest, and that would be a recession, and then it can be anywhere up above that as well. But the main point I think that I wanted to make is that there's an expectation that things have been going so well for so long that naturally in the economic cycle there needs to be a correction or a slowing or a downturn. In this case, we're talking about growth, so anything above that 0% line is still growth of GDP or growth in the economy. We particularly feel it when there is no growth, when it starts to contract. which is what happened in the recession there. So there's no guarantee of how this will go. They're looking at around the 2020 timeframe. Some economists have been projecting a slowdown or a recession for several years now, and we're still doing pretty well. So we just kind of like to be aware of what people are saying, and then we keep watching to see what actually happens. We're fortunate to live in Utah. Utah's economy lately has been one of the strongest, and even as the national economy took such a hard hit, things in Utah were not quite as bad as they were nationally. So we have that blessing going for us, and so we're fortunate that way. Do you have any questions about any of that so far? Okay. We'll move on to the rest of the report then. I provided a printout from our software that it's the 50-page version of our financial statement. So there's a lot of detail there, and you're not necessarily expected to understand it all. We're happy to explain things if you have questions about it. The most important thing I think to take away is to look at the revenues and expenditures and see how they're going compared to budget, and how they compare to revenues compared to expenditures. To help you do that, we put together the bar graph that's on the front, which basically summarizes what we have in detail in the 50 pages. So there's a green dashed line. Can you scroll down a little bit, John? Thank you. There's a green dashed line at the 25% mark, just indicating 25% of the fiscal year at the end of September. Several of the expenditure and some of the revenue lines go over the 25%. Where we're this early in the fiscal year, it's not too concerning. We expect the expenditures to sort of be ahead of the 25% because we have a lot of annual expenditures that happen up front in the fiscal year. So it's helpful to look at that and think about it. But as the year progresses, then it becomes a little more meaningful to us as we look at that. You'll notice in the general fund expenditure graph, most of the departments are pretty close to that 25% or lower.
Can you scroll up on that one?
Yeah, that third graph, thank you. The non-departmental line is through the roof, but that's just because of our annual liability insurance and vehicle insurance. So that's expected, and it's not expected that we'll exceed the total budget for the year in that department. Do you have any questions about any of those items so far?
Evan, just out of curiosity, so this general fund expenditures is also a quarterly graph as well?
Yes.
I assume that. Just wanted clarification.
Yes, it is. Councilman Swanson reached out to me with some questions regarding amphitheater line items in the report, and so I wanted to talk for a minute about those. Let's see. I'm going to give you this little summary that I put together.
I've been fired.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan.
Thanks, sir.
When it comes to the amphitheater, we have general ledger accounts related to the amphitheater programs that go on at the facility, and then we have different GL accounts related to the construction of the facility. So I looked back at the history to pull these numbers. Speaking of the program items, in fiscal year 18, we had 9,878 in revenue for the program revenue. In the current fiscal year, we have 18,604. The total of those is 28,483. And then on the expenditure side, we had 4,100 in fiscal year 18, and then 19,222 in the current fiscal year, for a total of 23,391. So it gets a little bit tricky. Our reports are based on fiscal year, but our fiscal year line divides right in the middle of the summer. And so some expenditures related to these programs might show up in one fiscal year, even if the production is the next fiscal year. So if you're curious about, what was the expenditure revenues just for one program, we can get that information. It's just not quite as easy to grab as the fiscal year numbers, if that makes sense. So, but when you look at it as a fiscal year, these numbers that I'm showing here, the numbers look pretty good to me. We're showing 28,483 in revenue compared to 23,391 in expenditures. So that's on the program side. On the construction side, you can see we received the $688,000 in grant revenue that helped fund the construction of the facility. In fiscal year 18, we had $2,006,000 in expense for construction. In the current fiscal year, we have $101,320 in construction for the facility. And I've shown you also the budgets down there. Last fiscal year, we had about $54,000. Is that what the number was? John can do math in his head, but I can't. Let's see. $56,414 was remaining at the end of last fiscal year. And in our budget amendment last month, we rolled that money forward into the current year budget, and then we added an additional $700,000, which was, we talked about that, and which was, dependent upon the grant revenue coming in. So the $101,320 in expenditure is not a number that we talked about as part of the budget amendment. So that number is made up of 3 Wadman invoices that got Wadman through the current phase of the project. So we'll probably need to revisit the amphitheater construction budget once we hear back on the grant revenue and what that funding is going to be like, as well as our estimation of what the expenditure will be for the next phase of the project.
Evan, if I may, on that 101,000, so those are invoices for construction that's already taken place on the amphitheater were invoiced to us in this current fiscal year, correct?
Yes. Okay. And I believe that's all we're going to see until the next phase. Is that right, John?
Yeah, so for example, the final invoice from Wadman was sent to us on August 28th. And I think what will be most helpful for the council is we'll go back and look at all the expenditures on the amphitheater as well as all of the budget for the years since probably back as far as 2017 fiscal year, because that's when we started the design. And I think that when you see all those numbers come in, we'll be under what our projected budget was for the project. It's just we didn't continually roll the money forward. So, because right now the final invoice for Wadman, for example, says that there was 1.9 million paid to them. So the rest of this money was the design, which I think was actually budgeted in 2017. But we'll bring back a more detailed analysis that shows you all the fiscal years where any money's been spent, as well as what the budget was. And then we can figure that out and show you exactly where the money's either wasn't budgeted or where it didn't get rolled over, sort of a thing. So,
Evan, can you answer a question for me?
Sure.
On the fiscal year 18 under the amphitheater program revenue, 9878.82, the 18,604.72, what is that at? What is that a culmination of?
The 18,604 is program revenue since July, so that would all pertain to the Once on This Island production. The 9,878, I think most of that is probably Once on This Island, but some of it may have come, the previous July. I didn't look into the detail of where those numbers all came from, but I know a good portion of the 9,800 came at the end of fiscal year 18, which would have been May, June timeframe.
So this is like a culmination of both Once on This Island and Joseph?
Well, John and I were trying to remember when Joseph was. Does anybody remember?
2 years prior to this year.
So, okay.
In 16.
16, 17.
So it would have been in August of 2016.
Yes.
So that extra $9,000, where did that come from?
That's probably for the one we just did.
Well, I think most of it would be part of Once on This Island. We did get quite a bit of money in donations, actually, which would have come, I think most of the donations came prior to the production, and so a lot of that money showed up in June or, before July. So I think a lot of the 9,800 is donated money that went toward the production.
So again, maybe it's just that I'm just missed. So 18,604 is a combination of Once on This Island and then contributions.
Well, both of those, the 9,800 and the 18,604. I think most of the 18,604 is actually admissions to the production.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then are we budgeting 21,000 both years?
We have done that. That's $21,000 was approved in both fiscal year budgets.
Is that just for that, or is it for Cherry Days as well?
Just for the production.
Just for productions?
Cherry Days has a separate line item.
Yeah, I thought it did, but that was a part of budget meeting this last year.
Well, and as a reminder, Council, when you budget items for an expenditure, there's always an offsetting revenue, and so the budget is that, like the 21,000 is compared to the 19,000 that was expended, and then the revenue would show up in a different revenue line that was budgeted for general fund revenues. So it's not like there was general fund money on top of the revenue that was being spent. It was just how it's accounted for.
Any other questions on the amphitheater? So that's pretty much the report. We will look forward to the budget process beginning in the next couple months, and so we'll start having those budget discussions, and the departments will be working on putting numbers together and proposals together. If any council members have priorities that you would like to voice, the sooner we hear about them, the easier it is for us to incorporate them into the proposals that we make. I don't expect you to bring them up right now, but we will have an initial budget kickoff discussion at a council meeting that will be an opportunity for you to voice your priorities. But you're welcome to send emails as well to the mayor or John, and we'll do our best to incorporate those priorities into the budget that we bring to you.
I know, Evan, one thing I'm wanting to emphasize this next year is getting Lowman View Park up and functioning. So any issues with the parks, McGriff Park with the problem with the water, and then the restrooms at Lowman View are going to be an issue that I'm going to watch very carefully.
Thank you.
We need to make sure that that's taken care of.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Evan. Appreciate that report.
Mayor, it says discussion or action. Do we need to take action on this or not?
We do.
I'd
entertain a motion for approval of the financial report.
So moved.
I second that.
The motion has been made by Councilman Turner and been seconded by Council Severine. Any other discussion or questions? If not, we'll begin the voting with Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Councilman Swanson?
Yes.
Councilman Barker?
Yes.
Councilman Severine?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you.
Thanks, Scouts.
Oh, it's just getting good.
Good
now.
to see you men today.
Like the hair. You should have colored the lower part green. In Christmas.
Item 6, a discussion or action to consider reduced speed limit on Washington Boulevard. That has been discussed. Any other discussions, Councilwoman Stoker, on this?
Well, I think just for some clarification here, no decision was ever made on this. It was a discussion and an opportunity for Representative Anderson to come and present what he had found out and knew about. And Washington Boulevard is under UDOT. It isn't under North Ogden City, so no decision can be made by us without UDOT approval. They're the ones that control that, not the city. So I just want to make that clear that the council is not, nothing was done beforehand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just also, we're only doing a study right now.
Yeah.
UDOT's doing a study. We're not.
Yeah, we're not.
Correct.
And that really originated with the death of the two young children, right?
Correct.
So that was really the origination point that even got this moving along.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, item 7, discussion or action to consider proclamation of North Ogden City School Choice Week for January 26th and 2019. I received this letter for your understanding, Council. We are respectfully requesting that you consider joining dozens of cities and county leaders across the country in officially recognizing January 20th to 26th, 2019 as School Choice Week in North Ogden. National School Choice Week will feature an unprecedented 40,000 plus events nationwide. National School Choice Week is entirely non-political and non-partisan, and we do not advocate for or against any legislation. Our goal is simply to raise awareness among parents of the public and non-public kindergarten through 12th grade education options available to their children. Last year, more than 720 mayors and county leaders, along with 32 governors, the unanimous United States Senate, and the President issued proclamation recognizing National School Choice Week. Please let me know if you're able to issue this proclamation and help us raise awareness of the importance of the opportunity in education. I greatly appreciate your consideration. We have provided both a Word and a PDF proclamation, a template on our website. So, Council...
Who is that from, Mayor?
It is from... His name was on here at one time.
Nice tie, Rob.
I can't find it on this letter now.
Thank you.
Abercrombie or?
Yeah. Is it on your email?
No. It was something like Abercrombie. Andrew, oh, there it is.
Campanella.
Thank you. Andrew Campanella.
Mayor, I did some research on this, and we had a response back from a citizen claiming this was somewhat of a vitriolic subject nationally.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see anything, and I spent probably about a good hour, and I know I could have spent longer time, but working through about an hour's worth of work on the internet, I couldn't see why we wouldn't want to support this particular campaign to encourage parents' rights to choose. So,
thank you for your comment.
I'm in favor of it.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to know more before we go to actually engage the city through a proclamation. I had tried to contact you earlier today to find out who sent this to us. I'd like to know more.
He's president of National School Choice Week.
He's the founder and president of it, from what I just pulled up. I'd like to know more about him. I'd like to know more about his organization. I'd like to know more about how apolitical they really are. They may be, and I just don't know. But I'm not ready to jump on board with someone that I don't know anything about, and an organization that I know nothing about.
Okay.
Other than, it's a great sales pitch. Sounds good, but I don't know anything about this individual, and whether or not that citizen's claims are as were indicated or not, I think we ought to find out a little more about this before we get involved. That's my feeling.
Any other comments? We got time to do this because it doesn't come up until January.
Makes sense. Makes sense to find out more.
I'm just curious what's even going to happen if we sign the proclamation or don't. Our residents know they've got multiple options for schools in the area, and they know about them. So,
I think it's like, for me, it was, the red flag for me was similar to other proclamations we've been asked to be a part of.
And we haven't signed most of them.
It's a way, for some, I'm not saying this organization, but for some it's a way to say, look at all the support that we have, and then to try to pressure legislatures and federal lawmakers, saying, look at all, we have 32 governors and we have all these other things behind us. I'd like to know what it is we're supporting by signing that proclamation beyond just school choice.
That's why I read the letter that came with it, and so we've had that discussion, and we'll move forward with more investigation and then bring it back to the council. Thank you. Next item is discussion and action to consider an ordinance to establish a setback standard for lots having a slope greater than 10%. This will be presented by Rob Scott, our planning director.
Thanks, Mayor, Council, and audience. This ordinance, as you read the report, has been around for a while. Been a lot of other things that have been pressing, but back in 2014, we initially discussed with the desirability of allowing for steeper lots to be able to have a reduced front setback. Since that time, we've processed 6 variance requests that basically have been involved with the desirability to do just that. All 6 of those requests were granted. And since that time, as part of our review with our hearing officer, she ended up recommending that the city take a look at actually creating an ordinance instead of having to go through a variance process each time one of these situations arise. So that's exactly what we have done as a staff. We've been working with the Planning Commission relative to do just that. So the basis for the granting of those variances related to such things as creating a safer building area, eliminating excessive retaining walls or excessive cuts and fills, and increases the usable area for the lots themselves. And in addition to that, staff in our review, it's pretty common knowledge that steep slopes are generally more difficult and expensive to build upon. Additionally, this amendment would improve erosion control, not only for the person that's on there, but for the adjoining lots, with a lot of our city being involved with slopes and hillsides and what have you. It's important to make sure that when someone does something on their lot, it doesn't impact their neighbor. So in addition to that, there's the opportunity to create some additional stability. So we generally have a 30-foot front setback in all of our residential zones, as far as our single-family zones are concerned. And this is measured from the front property line. That's usually 1 foot back from the sidewalk. And then the front setback also needs to provide for utility easements, and we also have driveways to access parking. So those are generally the two things that we have to maintain relative to front setbacks. I've given you a section of our ordinance that talks about if we have slopes on any properties that are over 20%, it actually requires a variance to be obtained through our city engineer to be able to build on those lots. And we do not allow any development on slopes over 30%. So as we've looked at this, as far as the general plan, we have quite a number of statements in our general plan that relate to the environment and overall safety. In our vision, we talk about maintaining an essential characteristic of our family-friendly community. There are many environmental issues that need to be proactively addressed. Adhering to high-quality building and design standards. Under the environmental section, it talks about continued use land use approach found in the hillside protection zones, reduce and avoid impacts on sensitive lands, proactively evaluate our current ordinances, which we're continually doing that, and work with those who may be impacted by these types of things to address those concerns. So a summary for you and a summary for what the Planning Commission considered. Should the setback standards for the lots be reduced from 30 feet to 20 feet on lots having an overall slope greater than 10%, and is the proposal consistent with the general plan? So this is one of our shorter ordinances. What this would do is then we would measure the overall slope of our lot. If it's over 10%, then by right, an individual would have the ability to go from 30-foot front setback to 20 feet. This still would allow for the safety factor of being able to provide for visitor parking, and cars would not be parked across the sidewalk, those types of things. So the recommendation from the Planning Commission, it was there were 5 members present when this was considered at the public hearing. They voted to recommend adoption of the amendment. The Planning Commission found that the amendment is consistent with the general plan. We had 2 individuals who came, if you've read the minutes, to the public hearing. One individual is potentially, if this ordinance doesn't pass, the 7th variance request. And so we're present this to you so that this could be acted upon and move forward. So be happy to answer any questions. Council?
Rob, you mentioned a prohibition of development over 30%. Is that 30% or 20%?
30%.
Over 20%?
Between 20 and 30, you have to obtain a variance.
Okay.
Above 30, then no development.
No
is to
dice,
occur
okay.
Above 30%. That's pretty steep.
So I asked a question email, and I didn't have your email, Rob. I would have sent it to
sorry.
you, but I probably had it somewhere. I just couldn't find it when I was doing it. Should this ordinance read 10% to 20%, and then that, because someone would get in here and think it's because it says percentage greater than 10%, and they may have a 20% lot and think that they can reduce it without getting a variance. I know it's in someplace else in the ordinance that says 20%, but maybe this one should say something like greater than 10% and less than 20%. You know, that was my only question, is if it should say that just so it points them to the other one for a variance or not. Or is that too wordy?
Well, it's not too wordy. I just think that there are two different things. So in my mind, if you are anywhere above 10%, then it makes sense to me to reduce that front setback, and that could be considered as part of any variance request if the property happens to be over 20%.
One other thing is that the setback we're talking about occurs when someone applies for a building permit. The inclusion of a lot over 20% on a plat is the subdivision. So they're actually in two separate titles of our code.
Okay.
And so they wouldn't naturally happen in the same timeframe.
So wording that wouldn't make a difference. Okay.
Any other questions, Council?
My sweater makes a noise.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any comments on this particular item from the audience? Seeing none, Council, I would entertain a motion on this.
What's the ordinance number?
2018-32.
Mayor, I'd move that we approve ordinance 2018-32, establishing setback standards for lots having a slope greater than 10%, as discussed and presented by Rob.
We have a motion from Councilman Swanson on 2018-32 to establish setback standard for lots having a slope greater than 10%. Have a second?
I second that.
A second by Councilman Severine. Begin the voting with Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Councilman Barker.
Yes.
Councilman Severine.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 9, discussion or action to consider amendments to the Village at Prominence Point, Phase 1 and 2, age-restricted cottages to reduce the rear setback from 20 feet to 10 feet and the front setback from 20 feet to 10 feet, and clarify the setbacks on lots abutting the reserve area of 300 East. Presenter will be Rob Scott, Planning Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this particular item, you're all very familiar with the Village at Prominence Point project. And Phase 1 and Phase 2 is a two subdivisions, two different phases with two different housing types. We have one section of it that has townhomes and the other one that has what's referred to as age-restricted cottages. And as both subdivisions are part of the information that I provided to you, but we're really only dealing with the setbacks associated with the cottages. So if I can just clarify that one aspect of things. Now there's three things that are before you, and hopefully I can present these in a way that will make not only some sense, but help you in making your determination relative to these. So the Planning Commission has actually reviewed these particular items as well. So they've made a recommendation on all three of these specific requests that are before you. So the three requests are, first of all, that the rear setback for the age-restricted cottages be allowed to be from 20 feet to 10 feet. So that's the rear setback. The second one is that we are recommending that an amendment to reduce the front setback from 15 feet to 10 feet. And I'll go into detail as to why I'm recommending that here in a minute. And thirdly, is an amendment that clarifies the setback adjoining the reserve area for 300 East be measured from the back of curb. And again, I'll share some information relative to the significance of that. So let's take these one at a time. Amendment 1, the rear setback reduction. The Planning Commission heard that request here recently on December 5th. The Planning Commission, as far as the subdivision was concerned, has granted final approval, and that was done in August. There's also a site plan review process that has not been completed at this time, and staff is working with the applicant to obtain the necessary information to complete that site plan review. So we have a development agreement with respect to this property, and agreement A29-2017 has one of its exhibits, L. If we could go to that.
Exhibit L, which is
Exhibit, yeah, that's Exhibit L in the development agreement, but it's Exhibit B in your attachments. So as you can see here, this exhibit identifies the rear setbacks around both of these phases. And the minimum setback for these phases is 20 feet. And that's was approved as part of the initial development agreement and has not changed, but is being requested this evening to be modified. So to help you out with gaining a perspective of what you're going to be asked to do here, I've given you the lot numbers of the various cottages. And just a reminder, the building height maximum, these are all not only single family, but they're single story buildings. So I have a maximum of 25 feet in height. So the lots, if we can go to the, let's try the site plan, Exhibit C, and then I hope I can.
That one?
Yeah, thanks. Can we blow it up just a little bit? Maybe we need to reduce it just a hair so we can get the whole thing on the screen.
Like that?
Yeah, one more pinch down if we can. Great. So what's going to take place is that the access for these two subdivisions is off of Washington Boulevard down in here in this location here. And then the street 365 East goes up and then comes across, and then there's a loop road that, oh, thanks. There's a loop road that goes around and provides the frontage for these lots. So here's Washington Boulevard. The car wash location is right here. Big O is right here. And then we have subdivisions to the north and the west. And then this is the Canyon View Senior Living Center just to the south here. So what this is showing is here are the townhomes in this location, these areas that I'm pointing out, and then the cottages go around in kind of a C affair that's like that. So as part of that, we're just talking about the cottages here, and so the numbers are not necessarily in sequence, but they are reflective of what's on the final plat. So lots 23 through 35, these are generally these lots right along here on the north side. They range in size from, as far as area, from a little over 4,300 square feet to 7,200 square feet. They have buildable areas that range from a little over 2,000 square feet to 3,850. So the other lots, because of their relationship to, I believe it's Coldwater Creek along here, you can see that they are quite a bit larger lots, and those lots range from 4,000 feet all the way up to 18,600 square feet. They have buildable areas of 1,750 almost to 3,250. Another aspect of this, when you start talking about lots and lot dimensions and sizes and their effectiveness, has to do with the depth of the lots. So the shortest setback is, I don't know if I can, it's one of these lots in here. It's lot 82 through 93, and it's lots if I can make sure I get it right here for you. It's these two lots right here. I think it's 83 and 84, or 84 and 85. I can't remember exactly which ones. But in any case, that depth is only 77 feet. So by way of giving you an example, the applicant has provided 7 cottage floor plans. They range in size from 1,215 square feet to a little over almost 2,100 square feet. The floor plans show a depth range of 43.5 feet to 57 feet. The front setback is recommended to be 10 feet to provide additional flexibility. The driveway inserts shown on the site plan for the required driveway depth of 20 feet to ensure the parked cars will not overhang the sidewalk. So it's very similar to the ordinance that we just passed. 20 feet is an important number relative to what we're working with as far as setbacks and cars and so forth. So the applicant is requesting the flexibility of adding additional floor plans which will require a setback reduction, and he's here tonight and can share with you what his rationale is for doing that. So the shortest lot depth in the project is 77 feet. It's lots 85 and 86. The applicant has shown a house plan that with the 10-foot front setback and 43.5 feet of building depth retains a 23.5-foot rear setback. The applicant's request is that another house plan with a 52-foot depth be allowed. Allowing this additional house plan would require a 15-foot setback. So they're asking for some flexibility with respect to those house plan designs, and we provided those for you in your attachments. Let's see. So the house plans that have a 50-plus foot depth require a lot depth of 80 to 85 feet to meet the 20-foot rear setback. By adjusting the house plans to the lot depths, none of the lots will require a rear lot setback reduction. But again, it's a question of how much flexibility do you want to give the applicant. So part of this analysis that we did took a look at the surrounding properties. So the properties to the north and west here are the Roy Lance Farms subdivisions, phases 3 and 4. These are all single-family homes, and they have varying setbacks, but have a rear yard minimum of 20 feet. The Canyon View Center down to the south here has a ring of proposed similar type of housing units around the larger building, and their site plan has a 21-foot setback. Additionally, when we're dealing with smaller lots and what have you, recently the council approved a revision to our ordinances to allow an R15 zone which may help you to kind of gauge the relationship to this request as well. These are similar to the Legacy North project, which is just across the street here. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. The R15 zone requires an area range of between 4,000 and 5,000 square foot lots, so pretty similar to what's happening here. The front setback for that zone requires 20 feet in the front, 7-foot sides, and a rear of 20 feet. There is an exception for a rear yard setback that may be reduced 10%, provided that the combined distance between the neighboring structures remains 40 feet or greater. And this was applied to the Smiths complex over here. So the lots that are on the west side of Legacy North that abut Smiths were allowed to have an 18-foot rear setback instead of 20. The other lots that are on the east side, those were required to retain the 20 feet. So I don't know that any of those things rise to the level of helping you make your decision or not, but hopefully it does. I'm going to, maybe it'd be helpful if I just gave you what the Planning Commission's recommendation was at this point for that one, and then we'll move on to the others. So when you look under recommendation, I've pulled that out, Amendment 1, which is the one we're talking about. The Planning Commission recommends that the rear setback be reduced from 20 feet to 15 feet and not from 20 feet to 10. The Planning Commission found that the relocation of the cottage units to abut the single-family homes provides a better housing type transition, and this is an acceptable alternative. The vote was 3 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention. So we had obviously, we had 5 people there at the meeting. So, so you have some options for this specific request. Option 1 would be to approve the Planning Commission recommendation to reduce the rear setback from 20 feet to 15 feet. Option 2, approve the applicant's request to reduce the rear setback from 20 feet to 10 feet. Or option 3 would be to deny the amendment. So, do you want me to go through the rest of these before we start discussing, or do you want to discuss them now? I'm happy to give you I think these other 2 are pretty short.
Rob, I have a question on, so the current plans, there are 7 designs that meet the 20-foot setback, correct? Is that?
It depends on the lot that they're attached to.
Okay.
Some of them do and some of them don't, but there's one plan that meets it in all instances.
Okay.
So if you look at the Table D, the lot matrix, it shows the request for the specific plans that they're interested in having, and it shows the various depths. So you almost have to look at each individual lot to determine whether or not they would be able to meet that setback or not.
So is the purpose of the request then to enable any plan to be built on any lot, essentially?
What would happen is that within that matrix, the way I think will make the most sense for us to be able to administer it and for them to be able to work through being able to sell them would be that we would approve that matrix as part of the site plan, and then we would be able to say on this lot you can have up to this amount of area. So
thank you, John.
You saw this, so you can see here's the plans here, and then each of the lots are listed, and then they've done check marks here. So you can see that there's a couple of them that, what's the maximum? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on a couple of these lots, their thinking is that 6 out of the 7 plans would work on those particular lots. On a couple of them, you can see that there's just two plans that would work.
Rob, can I clarify so
This
that
seems to be a little bit different.
you don't have to backtrack?
Yeah, I just.
up to them, not me.
This matrix is based on the 10-foot setback, and this is not based on the 20-foot setback. So as you're looking at the approved, or the plans that'll fit on a lot, it's based on 10 feet, and I'll explain why when I get there, but I just didn't want you to be thinking that all of these will fit on a 20-foot setback, because they are not based on the 20-foot setback.
Right. Thank you.
If I gave that impression, I apologize. Any other questions before I move on to the Second Amendment? Let's go to the site plan again, if we could, John. And then you'll see here on the site plan that here's the inserts for the parking, and then the design shows a 10-foot setback there. I was always under the impression that that's where we were headed, and then as part of my review, I looked in our ordinance further, and it actually requires a 15-foot setback. I've been sharing with them that I would recommend that, and I'm still holding to that. And I think 10 feet provides them some additional flexibility. We still, with these inserts, we still get our 20 feet of parking for visitors, and so we're not into compromising safety when it comes to that. I think that's fairly straightforward. Any questions about that one? So basically, we're saying instead of 15 feet, it would be 10 feet. And if we could go to Exhibit
Rob,
H.
real quick.
Yes, sir.
In the note, it says, you're talking about the front.
Correct. The front
In the
setback.
note on 9, it says the front setback from 20 feet to 10 feet on item 9. But you're saying it's 15 feet to 10 feet?
Item 9.
On the agenda. On the agenda here.
Oh.
On the agenda.
Let's see.
But it was originally 15 feet?
Correct.
Well, that's just a typo there.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not Annette's fault. She never makes mistakes. It's always me.
So, and the planning commission recommends 10 feet?
Correct.
So basically, they'd be gaining with the 5 feet in the back and 10 feet and 5 feet in the front.
That's their recommendation, yes. So if we could maybe just blow this up just a little bit more, John. So 300 East is shown as a reserve area. And the Planning Commission and the City Council and neighbors at this point have said, we're really not interested in punching the road through. However, there has been some discussion that at some point in time, it may be necessary to do that. But for the time being, the idea is that there will simply be some sort of a pedestrian trail or something along there. Well, whenever you reserve an area for a potential street, then those become corner lots. So lot 22 and lot 23. So if you measure the setback from the back of curb on the east side, they meet the 20 feet. If you do that, typically you would be doing it from property line, and that would mean they would have to lose a lot there, or a building on that situation. And the same thing would hold true on the west. So in this case, it's a little tighter because it's the inside of the curve, 13.82 feet here, and it's about 18 feet in this location. Given the fact that it's more than likely a very long-term thing that this would ever happen, it seems reasonable, and the Planning Commission and our planning staff felt that this was a reasonable request to allow for that setback to be measured based on those dimensions. Any questions with that? And the Planning Commission, again, is recommending in favor of that as well. Thanks, Council. Any more questions that I can help you with? Thanks.
Any public comments regarding this item?
The applicant here, Mayor.
From the public first or the applicant, Mayor?
You can go with public first.
Hi, I'm Michelle Call, 835 East, 2100 North. I'm speaking on behalf of my son and his wife. My son is in Kuwait, serving our country at this time. His property is in the cul-de-sac. I don't know what the subdivision is called. But I was at my daughter-in-law's home, at my son's home last week when somebody came, and I don't know if it was it you? It was me. Was it you? That there was some discussion about that, and I don't know what the decision was with her. Do you?
She was going to get a hold of John and get back to me.
Okay. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning there right now, and his first order priority at 5 o'clock in the morning is to call his children and his wife and speak with them. I sent a message to him, so hopefully he will, I don't know, get back to us tonight. I don't know. But I gotta say, my blood is boiling a little bit about this. I feel like, and this whole city council thing is all new to me, and these discussions are all new to me. I don't know the protocol or anything like that. So if I'm inappropriate, please be kind and let me know I'm inappropriate. I need to step back a little bit. But I don't understand why, if there's, all of these plans have been submitted and they have been agreed upon and everything, and now they're coming with new plans to say, oh, we want to change it. We want to make the property lines different. We want to make it so that, you know, I don't understand all of this. I just don't understand it. That's why my blood is boiling a little bit, because I just don't understand. The plans have already been made. They've already been agreed upon. So in respect to you, I don't know if I can talk to him or not, if that's okay. But, you know, you're adding, that's not okay? Okay. So he's now adding plans, house plans, floor plans that don't fit into the original plan. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Because sometimes I don't, so I have to check.
That's okay. You know, just a point of clarification. The plans are submitted by the developer of the whole development.
Okay.
And then a lot of times they will have another developer comes in, and then they do the houses and the townhomes, and so it's a different developer, not the guy who originally submitted all that stuff. So that's where some of that confusion comes in, you know, and so they're trying to adopt to a plan that's already submitted. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
You know, so
it does make sense.
That's where some of that confusion can come.
But it seems to me that they're not trying to adapt into that space. They're trying to make changes to fit what they want and not what the city has already agreed to.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
That's how it kind of comes to us, though.
Okay. And I know that Jonathan was very active in this, and I just want to stand up for my son.
He actually emailed us, just so you're aware.
Did he?
Yeah.
About this particular thing?
He did.
Okay.
He emailed us today.
He told us,
okay.
He told us to be nice to you. No, I'm
He didn't know I was going to be standing up here. I'm not
Michelle,
quite sure what he
can you
said.
clarify, is this the good-looking one?
Yes, this is the good-looking one. Yes, as opposed to the smart one who's asleep over here. Just kidding. Jonathan, you do a great job. Or John. Are you John? Okay, mine is Jonathan. So, anyways, okay, so I'm just standing up for him. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm going to sit down now.
Thank you for your comments.
Maybe I could there's one bit of history that might be helpful to the audience. John, can we go back to the site plan?
This one? Or this?
Yes. No, that's fine. Can we just go out just a little bit? The initial plan this has been modified some. The initial plan actually had townhomes that extended here, and I've forgotten how far, but approximately over here. And then the cottages were somewhat interspersed. So as part of our review with that, we worked with the applicant, and we ended up with the cottages being all around this area so that they're all sort of together. And then the townhomes are in a more organized fashion as well, instead of trying to intersperse everything. And so planning staff, and I think the Planning Commission, all felt very good about the fact that the rear yards of predominantly what are single-family homes over here are going to be back against single-family homes. So if we can we go scroll down just a hair? I'm not sure how far it extends up.
Up this way?
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's perfect. So all of these homes have rear setbacks. These two homes here and here have side yard setbacks. Everybody else has a rear setback. So just from your getting a perspective and the relationship of these homes and how they're going to be built here. So you got single family either backing onto or a side yard here. Going this direction, you have one side yard, and then you have single family here. Can you go a little to the east there, John? And you'll see that these homes actually have some pretty good setbacks here as well, even though we've got the taller, more mass type townhomes that are on that east side. So just a little perspective. Hopefully that helps.
Jeff?
I'm Jeff Jackson. I'm one of the owners of Visionary Homes. Is there ability to hook my laptop up, John, or is it a lot of work?
No, our internet policy won't let us even hook a.
Okay, that's fine. I can do it through drawings. Can you help me with these exhibits over here as well? So just by way of a little bit of history, we bought this project. When I say bought the project, we bought the cottages and the townhomes about a year ago. And we've been working for the last year to try to understand and figure out how to fit within, what, as Councilman Turner explained, what was laid out as the master design. And I know that you guys have had this project before you many times and are probably weary and thin of it. Know that I am as well. Our goal is to build homes. It's not to change things. It's not to try to find an angle to improve things. It's really just trying to get things worked out so that we can build. As we've started into the design of the homes and into the process, that's when a lot of the challenges have arisen that we're trying to work through. And this is one of the ones that we're trying to work through. I'll say straight up that these lots are too shallow. In the master design, they should have never been designed this shallow. And it's creating a challenge for us to provide a attractive product to 55 and older plus. I'll show you some drawings. I'll hand some out. But with the current drawings, I know Rob had mentioned buildable areas, and I'll talk a little bit about buildable areas, but there's a difference between buildable area and I guess what you would say true buildable area. I mean, I know from a calculator we can take setbacks and subtract, and we can come up and say, okay, you can fit a 2,000 square foot home on there. But when you start talking about the 20-foot driveway that we're required to have and things like that, that starts to shrink really quick. When we met with Planning and Zoning 2 weeks ago, their biggest concern with the request that I'm making for a 10-foot setback is how is it going to affect the neighbors to the north? The neighbors to the north obviously are going to be impacted by this project immensely. I know that that's been a concern of the neighbors to the north from day one. They've expressed that to you, and you guys have been extremely sensitive to their concerns. And so I, as a citizen of not this city but another city, I applaud you for looking at what the citizens feel and need. So I went out as sister, Mrs. Call mentioned, I went out and I visited every single one of those neighbors along the north. My request, I don't feel like that it affects the neighbors to the west because of the canal. So even if we went down to a 10-foot setback on the west, they've still got the canal and the walking trail and everything. And so I did not go and visit the neighbors on the west. But there's 9 homeowners that live to the north. I caught every single one of them at their home, and this is the report. Is that 5 of the 9 were in favor of my request. 1 was a vacant home, so nobody's living there. One basically says, I'll go with what the majority of my neighbors say. One was undecided, which it sounds like you received a letter from Mr. Call, and I haven't seen that letter, so that's the one that I'm saying is undecided. And then there was one no. And so, you know, to me, 5 in favor, 1 vacant, and 1 that says I'll go with the majority puts us at 7. 7 of the 9 that say they like my request. As Rob mentioned, if you go back to the original Exhibit L, John, the townhomes, and this is why they were in favor of my request, is you can see the 2 buildings of townhomes that are on the right side of the screen there. They back right up to that duplex, and then they're looking into the backyard of quite a few of those neighbors. At 2 stories tall, if they're on their second floor, they would be able to see everything that's going on in the backyards of those neighbors. And truthfully, I don't think there's much difference between somebody that's 20 feet away from you versus 10 if they're staring into your backyard. If we go, and so now if you go back to our new layout, which I agree completely with what Rob mentioned, is we were trying to be sensitive to the neighbors. We took single-family homes, single-story homes all along that north, and then there's going to be a 6-foot vinyl fence that goes between our property and their property, and we're going to be down at 1 story. These are going to be restricted to 1 level, and so people that are in our cottages will not be able to look into the backyards of the neighbors to the north. And that is the reason, that's the sole reason that 5 of the 9 neighbors said, yeah, we're in favor of what you're requesting. The only other thing I would mention, and I don't know if you go back to the other diagram, one of the things that I probably shame on me for not reading deeper into when I bought the property was we did see this map, but if you really study the map and you start taking dimensions off of this map, it does talk about a 20-foot setback on the cottages, but if you start scaling the driveways that are in front of those homes that are along the north there, the ABBAs, they scale out from the street at about 18 feet from the street, not from the back of the sidewalk. So from the back of the sidewalk, they're scaling out at about 13 feet. And so just looking at the map and saying, okay, we can work with the dimensions, but when we started getting into the code and you've got to have 20 feet from the back of the sidewalk, immediately from that drawing you're looking at right there, we lose 7 feet because that drawing represents 13 feet from the back of the sidewalk rather than 20 feet from the back of the sidewalk. And so I wanted to hand out.
Is it Jeff?
Jeff, uh-huh.
So Rob's clarified that the ordinance is actually 15. That's correct, Rob? Not 20 feet. And I was confused with that too, because some of the notes said 20 feet, but according to what Rob's saying, the actual ordinance is 15 feet.
Correct. Now that's 15 feet in the front yard. It's
right,
still
yeah,
20 in the back. Okay. So what I've handed out to you is 5 of those 7 plans that Rob made mention to in the matrix. This first one on the front page is our smallest one. It's 1,215 square feet, the Marbury. I need one clarification from Rob before I dive into this. The 10 feet that we're requesting or that we're talking about on the front yard, is that measured from the property line or is that measured from the back of sidewalk? And there's because this sidewalk is a 5-foot PUE over the property line.
It's from back of sidewalk.
Okay, that's what I thought, which I didn't think till halfway through this meeting. So John, if you'll go back to the second plat, that one, and zoom in on some of those lots. So when Rob is talking, and you can just maybe zoom one tighter, and then pull down to where we can just see some of the lots, maybe up on that north boundary, right there. So when you're seeing a measurement right here, now these don't have measurements, the other plats do. I know that measurement right there is about 77 feet, and that is from property line to property line. If you take 5 feet, this sidewalk is inside of the property, so we're really talking when you talk about buildable area, if our 10 foot is measured from back of sidewalk, we're now down to 72 feet that we're working with. Perfect. And so this drawing that you're looking at in front of you, this floor plan, if you look at that 15 foot, so this drawing you're looking at on our smallest floor plan is already assuming a 10 foot setback in the front, because you'll see down there, I've got the measurement of 15 feet. So if I take it, I need to add a sidewalk to that. So that's already going to put this at 10 feet on the front. And then in the rear, you can see that I've got my 10 foot line, and then I do have 12 more feet right there. So right now, if we stayed with if we didn't even stay with the current, if we stayed with a 20 foot setback in the rear and did go to the 10 foot setback in the front, this home would barely fit. And this is our smallest home.
Is the dotted line your soffits?
The dotted line is the setbacks. You're talking the big, that dotted line is kind of the box that I have to fit in with the setbacks. And so I'm already assuming on this smallest plan that you're going to grant us the 10 feet on the front. If we didn't have the 10 feet on the front and we had to maintain the 15 feet from behind of sidewalk, this plan would not fit on that lot. If we had to stay 15 in the front and 20 in the back, I would be 3 feet short of making this plan fit. And you can look at the layout. I mean, the intent of these 55 and older cottages is to provide a place for your residents to downsize from 3,500, 4,000, 5,000 square foot home. I don't think they're going to go all the way to a 1,200 square foot home. I really think that I would struggle to sell these 24 cottages in this community. And so as you step through all of the different plans, as they get bigger, you can see that they get worse. Like if you go to the Kinson, I can't even say my own plan names. I need to change how they name these things. The third one, the 1,500 square footer, that one you can see, so it's the third page in, and we're at 1,500 square feet. That is fitting front to back on the proposed subdivisions, the 10 feet in the rear, and then I keep saying 15 in the front because really Rob is saying that you get the proposal is to go down to 10, but you got to remember that's 10 from the back of the sidewalk. It's really 15 feet from the property line because the property line is 5 feet in front of the sidewalk. And so we're really talking a 15-foot front setback and a 10-foot rear setback, and that's exactly what this plan fits. And so, yes, I appreciate the Planning Commission being willing to work with us and say 5 in the front and 5 in the back. I'll be honest, it's not enough. For me to provide a good product for North Ogden City, I really need the 10 foot in the rear. And after understanding that the 10 feet in the front is measured from the back of the sidewalk, I really need the 10 in the front as well to make these lots buildable. Can I make them work without? Sure, but we're going to end up with plans that I know I'm not going to be happy with, and truthfully, I think I'm going to end up with plans that you guys as a city aren't happy with. And so short of begging, I do beg you to approve our request at the 10 feet in the rear.
Was it 10 feet in the rear to the vinyl fence?
To the vinyl fence, to approve the 10 feet in the rear and the 10 feet in the front. And again, the intent is just to be able to provide a nice product for the city. So
Rob, do you know what the size of the lots are on Legacy? Or, I mean,
they vary. They're in that 4,500. Some of them are a little bit bigger than that, but right around 4,500 square feet.
No, Rob, I'm assuming on that 4,500, they don't have the sidewalk coming onto that 4,500. That's outside of their 4,500.
There's only sidewalk on one side of the street there.
But on that side, it's not part of that 4,500.
You weren't here when Legacy. Maybe the better would be the question.
I was here for the last phase.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
But to be honest with you, I don't remember.
I just think as you look at the square footages, if these lots are 60 feet wide and 5 feet long, any number you're seeing, you've immediately got to subtract 300 square feet off for that sidewalk, because for all intents and purposes, it shouldn't have been counted as part of the lot size. It's a gimmick that developers play, and I don't agree with it.
So Jeff, I'm kind of curious. You mentioned that you talked to 5 of the 9 homeowners on the north.
I talked to all 9. 5 of them.
But 5 of them
were in favor of the request to go down to 10 feet. And again, it's because they like the idea that we remove the townhomes from their backyards and that we were trying to make it so that people weren't looking into their backyards and stuff like that. I mean, sure, nobody wants a house closer to them, but the alternative is townhomes 2-story. They're like, yeah, we'd rather have the single story closer to us than a 2-story home looking into our backyards.
So Rob, on that side lot one, is it only 5 feet away from the fence? Or would it be? So technically it's only 50, if we went with the 10 feet, it would only be 15 feet away from their home?
I haven't measured that dimension. I don't know if you did or not, but it's more than 5 feet.
Yeah, I think she's probably 10 to 12. So if I go 10 and she's 10 to 12, would be 22 feet between them.
And that is the garage side of the house, if I remember right as well.
It is. When I was sitting in her living room, she does have a living room window. It's a bay window on that south side of her unit that looks right out towards the vinyl fence. So she does have her bay window that looks right into, or we would look right into her.
So Fireman Ryan.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the fireman part of that? As far as 10 feet or 10 feet closer to the other homes and stuff, do you have any real thoughts? You worried about that fire jumping or?
No, not really. We'll put it out. Oh. If it jumps, we'll put out more fire. But no, I don't have an issue with the fire code.
I don't have anything else unless you guys have questions for me.
I got a question. Have you talked to Jack Barrett about this?
Yes, many times.
And what has he said? Just because, the reason I ask is when the car wash came, he got all upset that we even considered the variance for stucco. Because he said he worked hard to get the development agreement. So I want to know what his opinion is.
His agreement, both him and Chris Caves, and Jack was going to try to be here tonight. I'm not sure why he's not. There was some discussion between myself, Chris, and Jack that the 3 of us felt like it was already a 10-foot setback, but nobody can pinpoint to an email or to a discussion or where that even came from. And so Jack is fine with us looking to get it down to 10 feet. Yeah, there might be some issues between us and him if it doesn't get down to 10 feet. Let's just leave it at that.
I can understand that. Yeah.
So.
My big concern is we don't give 20 or 10 feet to anyone else. We got other PRUDs that are right here, and we're going to talk about it later. They're 20 feet, and it's 40 feet between buildings.
Yeah, I understand. I completely do. I do think that, and I obviously wasn't part of the original discussions as the whole MPU approval process. I don't know if I know the whole intent of the code or zone is a give and take. And I don't know if the things that you guys receive in exchange for open space, trails, those kind of things warrant. I mean, I do a lot of these developments and we negotiate different setbacks. We negotiate different requirements all the time. In exchange for different things. And so, obviously I'm doing it behind. It should have been done up front as part of the approval.
Part of this, though, is too that we've tried to set the standards for future developments on high density. We're trying to get it right. So when future ones come,
So can I give you one thing I would add to your zone? That no lot is there shouldn't be any lot that's less than 85, 90 feet deep. To have a lot that comes in that's at 77 feet, it makes it extremely tough.
I just know I've seen some developments like this down where I'm St. George with retired areas that their setbacks were I think they're even smaller than 10 feet on some of them on the back, you know. But they're usually just the big retirement areas and stuff. So I've seen them done very well. I just don't know if this is the place, you know. That's where I have a quandary with it. I'm not opposed to the setback if it's done correctly, but I don't know if this is the place for the setback. So that's where I'm wrestling in my brain with it. So, and I mean, my first was, yeah, I would go with the Planning Commission, what they recommended. That was my initial take on it. And then listening to Jeff, I can see your quandary, you know. So.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, just tonight, learning more and more, I just lost another 5 feet in the front yard because we've been figuring it off of property line, and now it's got to be figured off the back of the sidewalk. And so, I mean, I know we didn't physically lose it, but based on measurements and the way things are going to be calculated, we just lost another 5 feet on the front setback too.
Jeff, out of curiosity, just on average, what would this Marbury, for example, 1,215 square feet, what's going to be the price to buy that?
With the lot included, they would be right around 260, 250 to 260.
Phil, you always got something to say.
Don't let me turn my hat on.
Any other questions for Jeff?
No questions.
One other comment. And one of the difficulties that we have when the city is given a concept plan, and that's what we were given, was a concept plan. We did not have these dimensions as a part of that. In the future, I'll definitely be making sure that we have those additional dimensions, even if it's a concept plan as far as minimums. Because I do agree with Jeff that he's somewhat in a quandary relative to what he's been given. So, and I'm not arguing for his position or not, but just making sure that as we go forward that we learn from this situation and that we don't find ourselves caught in it again. So
Rob, do you know if maybe part of legacy, the reason the roads were narrower because of the same type of lot depth size, or, you know?
That, well, that was before me. So yeah, as far as the negotiations and what have you, but it's definitely a similar kind of a housing type and similar product with respect to senior housing and that. So, and you can see how well they've done. I mean, I think every one of those lots is turned over here within a year and a half.
Rob,
right?
for sake of maintaining that back setback, is there any value in considering for that? You know, I've talked to quite a few of the residents on that street as well, and the general answer that I got was, we'll live with the 10-foot setback because we like the single family. We don't necessarily want the 10-foot setback, but we really want the single-story cottage versus the townhome. Is there a possibility of us perhaps looking at something that hasn't been at least on the staff report, is allowing that front setback to be measured from property line for this particular piece to save some of that rear setback?
Well, here's my concern. I'm not worried about the setback of the building itself.
Right.
But from that sidewalk, we need this 20 feet here. To me, that is the safety feature in this whole thing. We've been over here to Coldwater Creek. You've seen what a mess that is when you don't have adequate parking for the vehicles. They're all across the sidewalk. That it's a safety hazard for not only people backing out, but for people having to walk around, cars and vehicles. So as far as I'm concerned, if you allowed for even additional in the front, it doesn't bother me.
So if you had
so
20 feet from garage, is that what you're?
No, I'm looking at these plans that were given to us where we've got this 15 feet here. Okay, that front setback
the
from
building,
property
not-
line, knowing that we've got 5 feet that gets lost because of the sidewalk.
Right.
Right, so we still have 10 feet from sidewalk to building on every one of these plans,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
So,
So if you wanted to make that, instead of 10 feet, 5 feet, I personally don't see that as
because my biggest concern, again, what I heard from the residents is we really love the single-story cottages. We don't love the 10-foot setback, and I don't know how many hours I personally have invested, and other council members that have been through this whole Village at Prominence Point thing have invested in getting to where we got. And great grammar there. Meg, don't scold me, okay? Meg's back there grading my English today. But I have real heartburn with changing that rear setback. I think if those that are purchasing the homes are okay with a closer front, I'm okay with that, because at least it's a buyer, the buyer knows going in. I just feel like we made an agreement to not only enable this density housing that we need here in North Ogden, but also to recognize the desires of the single-family homes that are behind them and not stack these on top of them. So I don't know, Council, that would be something I think to think about, is allowing that front measurement to be from front of sidewalk instead of back of sidewalk, which would, but like Rob said, that's only going to give 5 feet from back of sidewalk to the building itself, which may create its own issues. I don't know. Just a thought.
And still have 20 in the back and not 10 like they ask, or?
I would like to stay at the 20 if at all possible.
Planning said 15, or suggested 15.
Right. I'd like to stay at the 20, and if we have to give anything up, it'd be not the residents on the north side that have this development coming in and changing things, but those that are actually purchasing the units would be making the sacrifice for that extra room, in my mind, and I could be completely wrong. I'm not a builder.
I'd rather see it on the front than the back for the same reason.
And do you a great wheelchair.
So can I point out one thing? If you turn to go back to the 1,500 square foot, the third page in, because we looked at exactly what Councilman Swanson's talking about, is pulling that another 5 feet forward. If we can get the 15 feet in the rear, again, this plan's drawn at 10. Obviously, the great room and the nook and those bedrooms, we could just take that 5 feet and pull forward if we can go up to measure it from the back of the sidewalk. But because of what Rob is talking about, needing the 20 feet on the driveway, the master bedroom, the great room, the bathroom area, that can't change, and so the garage face has to stay right where it is to get to that 20 feet. And so to go down to even 15, we've got to pull 5 feet out of that master bedroom area. And I know that these aren't your issues. These are my issues with what I'm stuck with, but I'm just trying to help you see. And as you look through every one of these plans, unless there's a 10-foot offset between the garage face and the front of the home, which the Stafford plan has, the very front plan has, but the other three plans only have a 5-foot offset. And so with those 5-foot offsets, the garage can't move at all. And so the space behind the garage has to get smaller. And so as you look at what's behind those garages, imagine taking out 5 or 10 feet, and the plan becomes useless plan. There's one thought I had, and maybe one suggestion. John, if you go back to exhibit, no, it doesn't matter which exhibit. If the concern is to the neighbors to the north, which I fully understand, what about if we talked about different setbacks between the north homes versus the south and the west homes? The west homes, again, we've got that big buffer there by the creek and by the trail, and so going to a 10-foot setback on those homes, I'm not sure that it matters there. It doesn't affect the neighbors across the creek. And then on the south, we're up against the big assisted living building as well, and they've got parking lot. Now, I know in the planning and zoning, it was talked about that they originally had a plan with some other cottages there. Gunner had told me that they've abandoned those. I don't know. They haven't.
Well,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They haven't. It's on their approved plan.
On their approved. So yeah, I don't know. Gunner from Seattle told me that they had abandoned those, but I don't know. Just to make half the lots to where I can get bigger homes, and then we can work to keep the smaller homes on the north and be able to do bigger homes on the west and on the south. I'm really just looking for anything that I can to make buildable plans. So,
Can you scroll that to the west, please?
You want me to zoom in?
Yes, please.
Will you take a question from the public?
Not right now. In a minute.
You scroll west just a little bit more. Is that as far as it'll let you go?
It's the end of the picture.
Okay. And those are homes in that upper left corner there?
yeah, now our property goes across the creek, so the 10 foot on those, the west lots really doesn't matter. Those, we're going to be at our 20-foot setback because of the trail, so those 4 homes across the west side really don't matter. So I guess it would really be the south side.
I don't have a problem with the south side because it's the interior property. It's not affecting existing single-family homes. It'd be kind of like we have here in Legacy where they're abutting each other. They're very close together. My in-laws used to live in one of those, and they had great conversations with the neighbors deck to deck. It was like
Pass the butter?
It was in the same room. Personally, I wouldn't have a problem along this south side of having that 10-foot setback.
You go to the north side, what about those bigger lots that are right on the south northwest corner? Those 34 and 35, maybe they could be those are a little bigger.
Well, and if you go lots 32 through 35, those back up against that retention pond, and so I don't know. I'm willing to take anything I can get. So if those 4 lots could get down to a 10-foot setback, and then
that's a detention pond right there?
Yeah, that's not a home. That's a detention pond. Yeah, the ones that back up 32 to 35 back up against that pond. So just some suggestions. I appreciate your consideration.
Well, I don't know, Council. I think 33 through 35 could have that 10-foot setback, since that's a retention pond there. 32, part of it is, there is a home there. Yeah, just, first blush, I think those 3 lots, and then the ones on the south. I don't know what you guys are thinking. And then we'd keep the 20-foot on all those others on the north side.
I'd go with the planning commission recommendation. They said 15, give them 15. Planning commission recommended, if I remember right, Rob, recommended 15 in the back and 10 in the front. Correct. So. And if we went 15 in the back and 10 in the front, but measure from property line and not back sidewalk, and on the lots 32 to whatever 27 or whatever that next one is, because I can't see it right now, but And then 33, 34, and 35. I guess it's all the way up to 23, you know. I mean, just a thought. This is a noodler.
What'd you call it?
Noodler.
A noodler.
Noodler.
That's what I thought you said.
Hey, real estate guy, what do you think?
I think if the planning commission made that recommendation.
So for everything, you mean, or just?
Well, I think theirs was kind of status quo, wasn't it, across the board?
Yeah, that's the way I understood it.
That's what I understood. I like what the handsome John Cole said. He said,